about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Dahlia Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
And we're back on the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So for those of us watching the Knicks game, and I saw the whole thing, you saw them have a 29-point deficit. And when I'm watching them, remember, I got money on the Knicks, okay? Futures, they need to win the whole series. I'm watching them at a 29-point deficit. I'm like thinking to myself, no, Knicks are going to pull it. They're going to do it. And I thought of one of my favorite Martin Luther King Jr. quotes. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you keep moving forward. I hope I didn't mispronounce it. Yeah. Misquoted. And you know, you could be at a 29-point deficit, and like the Knicks yesterday, still pull out a 107-106 win over the Spurs. And I talked to medical students about this. I talked to regular, other students about this. I tell my kids, I go, look, if there's a chance, there's a chance. You're telling me there's a chance, like Dumb and Dumber, one of the most famous lines from that movie. So you're telling me there's a chance. There's a chance. There's always a chance. With my husband. When I met my husband, I thought he was cute, but I was dating a friend of his, and then I dated another friend of his. I thought Corey would never be in my future. But there was a chance. And that chance, luckily it might have manifested in him being desperate one day, going, you know what? I've dated everybody else. All right, we'll go for Dahlia. But there was a chance. And I married the man of my dreams. Medical school. Very difficult for me to get into medical school. No money. Didn't think I would be able to qualify for loans. I was working at Jack in the Box, making $4.15 an hour. I was working multiple part-time jobs. Barely got, I think, a 3.86 GPA. Thinking my odds were, I got it. I was able to do it. There's a chance. There's always a chance. Now, is there a chance for me to become, a Hollywood star where I get to act opposite in a love scene with Michael Fassbender? No, that chance is very minuscule. In fact, it's probably an angstrom amount of, it's probably an impossibility. But as we go through life, we really have to capitalize on the hope, and we have to embrace that there's a chance. When I see patients struggle, they're like, well, I have diabetes, or I smoked most of my life, or I drank or did drugs, and Dahlia, there's no way I'm going to, be healthy. And I'm like, the liver rejuvenates itself. Your kidneys, you give your kidneys good things to filter. You can maintain their function. I mean, there's chances, and you have to jump on that. I bring up Super Bowl was a 48 where the Broncos were playing the Seahawks, and there was a safety within the first, I guess, few seconds of the game. And so the Seahawks were immediately ahead by a safety. And I remember I was at the Tarkanian's house. We were watching, and I got to hang out with Jerry Tarkanian, who I was really idolized, because of the Running Rebels. And there was somebody at the party who actually had money on a safety and won a couple grand. I was pretty impressed with him. So then I sat next to him. But anyway, one thing I saw was the Broncos were so downtrodden from that safety, that loss, that psychologically they never recovered. And what I think it was like a 48-8. I don't remember the score, but the Seahawks slaughtered them. And somebody could say, well, maybe they would have slaughtered them anyway, and that's how they got the safety. But psychology is extremely important. And what we saw with the Knicks yesterday is they didn't let a 29-point deficit screw them over. I mean, I've seen multiple teams make comebacks. I mean, I don't know if you were watching the Golden Knights game a couple games ago. Golden Knights were leading 4-0. And the broadcasters were talking about how the chance is really slim for the Hurricanes to up against the Golden Knights, who are awesome and my favorite team ever, to come back with 4 goals, let alone anything, against the Knights, defense. And what happened is they did it. And so, there's always a chance. Comebacks happen. I mean, look at Robert Downey Jr. Huge comeback. I mean, people are making comebacks, and you can too. And when I was looking at the Knicks players, and maybe it's because you had everybody in the stands, you had Taylor Swift, you had Jerry Seinfeld, you had Chris Rock, which I, as a player, might have found a little distracting, going, Taylor Swift is watching, or Larry David's in the house, or Tracy Morgan, Spike Lee was there. I mean, I could see myself getting a little intimidated. But boy, did these guys have their focus. And apparently they felt the love, they felt the momentum, and they made a comeback, and they made a comeback fast. All of a sudden, fourth quarter, we were like, they could do this. And they did it. And they did it. And so great coaching, great team. So my advice to you all is, poop happens, bad stuff happens. And there might be family members or external forces or something that put you behind. And you'll feel like you got to dig yourself out of a hole. But do what Martin Luther King says. All right, just keep going. Don't stop. Get yourself out of that hole. Get yourself out of that deficit. Pivot. Make a lateral move. But there are ways to overcome. And, you'll be realistic about your goals. You might not be, as rich as Bill Gates, right? Or testifying like he had to with the Epstein relationship. You may not have realistic goals, and when you meet those goals, that gives you that motivation. So, like, for example, if I was on a team that was behind by 29, I would get such motivation by narrowing that deficit to 20 and then narrowing that deficit to 15. And I saw they did that. When they narrowed that deficit, you saw them get their drive and their second wind. So keep going. Congratulations, Knicks. Congratulations, Spurs. Castle, gorgeous. I love watching him. But, keep going, guys. 1-877 Doc Dolly. Don't go away.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799, and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
Hi, everyone. Super Bowl champ Vernon Davis here from Legal Help Center. If you've been injured in an accident and think you deserve compensation, listen up, because we have legal professionals standing by right now to answer your questions for free. You can find out if you have a case and how much it's potentially worth. The call is free, the consultation is free, and you can speak with a live agent right now. So if you or someone you know were injured in an accident of any kind, call now to find out if you have a case and how much you could potentially get.
Thanks, Vernon. You heard it, folks. If you've been injured, call and find out how much you qualify for. Call 800-679-0800. That's 800-679-0800. 800-679-0800. Advertisement sponsored by Legal Help Center. May not be available in all states. Not available in California.
Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. Dolly, 1-877-DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So this morning we were told that the Pentagon had to be locked down because of a hazardous materials incident. Now, CNN is reporting it was a false alarm. They say the Pentagon lockdown and evacuation was due to a false alarm. This is according to two sources familiar who told CNN. Multiple floors and corridors inside the building had been locked down. Others were evacuated due to a hazardous materials incident. Three sources familiar in a local fire department said this morning. Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell said the systems within the Pentagon had detected an air quality issue, necessitating precautionary measures until we determined its significance. Good. The department is executing standard protection protocols, they said, including a shelter-in-place order for the affected area. Response teams are in place and ready to support building occupants. The Pentagon's Force Protection Agency's Hazardous Materials Response Team responded to the incident, they said, with the assistance of the Arlington County Fire Department. This is according to department spokesperson Captain Jamie Gill. And like I said, they called it a hazardous materials incident. But a few minutes ago, we were told by CNN, false alarm, everything was okay. But they are still going to be doing additional testing. They said the additional testing could take 1 to 2 hours. Response teams are in place, ready to support building occupants if necessary. You may observe response personnel from multiple agencies and precautionary measures. So we don't have a lot of details on why this was a false alarm. But floors 2 through 5 and corridors 4 through 7 of the sprawling Pentagon complex, according to CNN, were locked down. A third source told CNN that police in the building wore gas masks and full chemical protective gear just in case. So we'll keep you guys posted on that. One of you had asked me, how did we in a medical office handle hazardous biohazard issues? And it's interesting because we never had something obviously of that degree. And most of our biohazard is blood, vomit. It's interesting because at a medical facility, if somebody has a bloody nose and they use Kleenex and put it in the garbage in the bathroom, like they would do at school, at Walmart, it might not be found. Yet, if you're a physician and you're doing a procedure on the nose and you have gauze with blood on it, that has to be in biohazard bags and sealed and protected from the public. We had to have special garbages. We had to have special garbage bags. We had to have labels. We had to dispose of it properly. We had to hire companies to take our biohazard. And I remember going into the bathroom after I took care of somebody who had a bloody nose, and I saw the garbage, right? That had tampons, had nose secretions, things like that. And that's just in a regular garbage. And so I kind of find that, so if you're a doctor and you're managing the blood, it's got to be wrapped up. If it's in a public bathroom, we still took it and we threw it in the biohazard. But it's one of those, big mysteries that doctors always ask. They go, if I'm doing a gynecological procedure and I have to biohazard everything, what are we supposed to do with the tampons in the bathroom? Because those are usually in regular garbage. But during COVID, you saw people's mask on the sidewalk and people would throw their masks and miss the garbage and not touch. And you're like, shouldn't if you're really saying COVID is this much of a threat, don't we want to include more biohazard protocols? But no, didn't happen. So interesting. But fortunately, it doesn't sound like this was a active threat. So hopefully everybody in the Pentagon is okay. In the meantime, the U.S. has launched a second day of strikes as Iran has been responding with attacks on Gulf neighbors. I believe there were people in India who were apparently attacked in the strait. We're getting breaking news as it comes. But Trump had threatened to bomb the blink out of Iran on Thursday if their leaders don't come to an agreement. Yeah, India said in the Strait of Hormuz, 3 Indian sailors were killed, they said, in a U.S. strike on a vessel attempting to violate the U.S. blockade on Iranian ports. we'll get more information on that and share that with you. So it seems to be, to me, I am a little confused by the messaging. At first, when I heard that Trump was announcing he was going to bomb, we're going to go after this. We're going to take Carg Island. We're going to, bomb the. Remember, he had what was it called, Bomb Day, where they were going to take out the bridges and all that. And mind you, I support, right, our administration in ending the current Iranian regime and finally, answering for the decades of them killing Americans, supplying terrorists means to go after America and Israel. And I mean, this had to be done. I wish it would have been done sooner. Not sure why previous administrations didn't do it. So I support that. I've just been a little confused by what's going on, unless that is the art of the distraction, which Trump is very, very good at. Saying he's going to bomb, certain targets. Is it because we're doing what we did when we rescued that pilot, which is something I had suggested to my husband. I go, they should say they found him in another part of the country so that it diverts, Iranian resources to that area. But then they actually go and pick him up where he really is. And then it turned out that's exactly what they did. And so it could be a little bit of that where he wants all their resources pooled to the areas that he says he is going to bomb, such that it opens up some vulnerabilities to other places. So it could be that. The other is Trump could be very confident that they have air control. Iran doesn't have much of a defense, and that the warning offers America that argument that they gave civilians and they gave ample warning to minimize loss of life. Could be that as well. I've been a little shocked that we haven't taken Carg Island. We know that that's what Iran needs. That's kind of their, I don't want to call it the heart, but it's a pretty important organ, to the Iran regime. I know Chuck Schumer doesn't like that idea because there would be boots on the ground. And listen, none of us really want to see our men and women lose their lives and be a part of a war that we thought that we could, basically handle, through missiles and through air control. But if it's going to take, which is, the reality of it, if this Iran war, is going to take, a combination of action in order to be successful, it might have to be done. Iran knows that we don't want to have boots on the ground. Iran knows that we don't want there to be fire that accidentally hits a school. They know, and they're trying to capitalize on that. They also know that the midterms are coming and that Congress is trying to limit Trump's powers. And so they're stalling. And let's say they do come to a deal. Let's say they actually say, okay, we have a deal. After all this BS, are they really going to honor it? And then what happens if they don't honor it? Who enforces it? And so, I think everybody's been telling Trump, finish the job. Don't let the Iran regime continue. It's like cancer. They're just going to regrow and they're going to reinfiltrate. And they're going to supply, Russia and Hezbollah and Hamas, and they're going to just keep going. No, we have to finish the job. It's very, without there being proper leadership. Israel provides a lot of the intelligence, and Israel gave America a lot of intelligence to allow Operation Midnight Hammer and Roaring Lion and some of these other operations to go through. But if Israel is kind of being cut off a little bit in terms of being able to find where everybody is, it's going to be a little challenging. Israel has, of course, offered. They're like, let us at them. Yeah, we're here. We're ready to go. One of America's best allies. Even Donald Trump said, my preference is to take Carg Island from Iran. If Iran doesn't have Carg Island, which is their storage, of their and their ability, to supply oil and gas to their country, it's going to be huge, and it will bring them to the table. And I think that probably is going to be the ultimate move. Unfortunately, it will involve boots on the ground. So we'll see what happens. Right now there's a wave of strikes going on. I think it's going into its third day, And, I believe Trump's strategy of telling them what we're doing is allowing them to move and into other areas, or it gives the media something to go after and talk and debate about so he could get something else done. 1-877 Doc Dolly. Don't go away.
Looking for a gift that can actually help secure someone's future? It's Mark Falter's new book, Common Sense Income Strategies. It makes the perfect gift for that special someone in your life. Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using time-tested strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. To learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Secure your future with Common Sense Income Strategies by Mark Falter. Again, to learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Dolly Show, 1-877 Dr. Dolly, 1-877-DOCDALI. So the Pan American Health Organization is warning that the World Cup could bring a multitude of infectious diseases. Can't we just enjoy the soccer? But all these articles are talking about how, oh my gosh, we got the millions of soccer fans coming, and North America is going to be hit with infectious disease after infectious disease, and it's when can we just relax a little bit? I'm going to be watching the World Cup. In fact, I'm going to be up in Alaska, and one of my really good buddies I'm going to be with, not because of the World Cup, but we're going to watch the USA Paraguay game tomorrow night. I think it's going to be 5 p.m. Pacific time. This follows Mexico and South Africa are playing today at noon Pacific time. South Korea and Czechia are playing at 7 p.m. Pacific time. Canada is playing Bosnia and Herzegovina tomorrow at noon. And then after USA and Paraguay, Saturday we got Qatar and Switzerland and Brazil, Morocco. It's going to be pretty cool. So the FIFA World Cup is going to be amazing. And being that it's here and we're hosting it, very, very cool. And I love that we have a president that supports sports. You know, it's interesting because I heard that a lot of people were cheering Trump at the Knicks game, but a lot of people were booing. And so the angle at which, and the microphone at which they got the boos, you just wonder, was that really representative of the whole? Because I'm hearing from some sources that people were cheering when they saw Trump. Listen, people are going to boo him, people are going to cheer him. But I'm just glad that I think sports is a huge industry. I think it definitely bolsters our economy. I think it also bolsters our image. I love the idea that we nail it at every Olympics, and we're going to represent. We're going to really, really represent with this World Cup, and I'm pretty impressed with our soccer players. And look at what we did with hockey. So it'll be good. However, yes, as a doctor, public health official, you do worry about are we looking at everything from a health standpoint? I know the government is also looking at things from a security standpoint with FISA, our Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which is a federal law that kind of establishes procedures for the physical and electronic surveillance and collection of foreign intelligence information. It allows the government to monitor foreign intelligence threats. There's been some concern about security, but on the other end, even though our borders are secure, we have a lot of vulnerabilities when we have millions of people coming in to watch FIFA. So, FIFA World Cup. So Trump is asking Congress for even a short-term extension for 21 days just to get us through the World Cup. It's a shame that we have to, be, frequently needing the extensions. But I do agree with there being the checks and balances and making sure that nothing is being weaponized or used inappropriately. But we're looking at something that could be pretty threatening. Like I said, we could be pretty vulnerable with this. So, hopefully Congress gets their acts together. So in the meantime, what are health officials worried about? They're worried about measles. They're worried about COVID. They're worried about hepatitis. But Pan American Health Organization is citing measles as their top concern. It's going to be 6 weeks of packed stadiums, bars, tourist sites in 16 cities. Even though, by the look of Madison Square Garden, nobody thought that could also be, a hotbed for infectious disease. I mean, boy, people are crowded. It's interesting. I've been to games. I've been to basketball games, football games, hockey games, depending on where you sit. Sometimes you're right on top of somebody. Sometimes you get a little bit more room, depending if you get the fancy seats. But I got to tell you, with basketball, there's not a lot of room in these stadiums. There's not a lot of, so I think you're more compact in something like that. So the CDC is, concerned. We got the Ebola outbreak in Central Africa. We just had that cruise ship hantavirus outbreak from the MV Hanabus. Which from what it sounds like, that's in pretty good control. Well, Ebola not, but the hantavirus. But of course we're concerned because I think just had somebody in Arizona die of hantavirus. Hantavirus is not supposed to be spread person to person usually, but the Andes strain apparently can. So I don't think the average person is going to be touching rat droppings watching soccer. But if they're sitting on the ground and they're waiting to get in line, maybe they could be exposed. So Rebecca Katz of Georgetown University, global health specialist, says our public health professionals are pretty stretched. At the Health Security Operations Center, a joint effort between Georgetown and MedStar Health, workers are analyzing data from around the country so they can alert health authorities, emergency rooms, and any early signs of trouble. And what they could do is look at our wastewater. You could test the wastewater to see what they see spikes of. That's how they were able to tell, if the COVID spike was coming. Or if we're seeing more measles or something else or hepatitis. They say the center is issuing daily situation reports about disease trends around the World Cup. They said they're going to have, they're looking at, emergency rooms and emergency management and have team base camps in case there are any sort of medical issues. Again, I'm more concerned about security right now. I'm especially with the stabbing at Penn State and the shooting in Toledo and some of the other things that we've seen recently. So hopefully, the Department of Homeland Security now got their funding, and they could be there at full team. But they say 2,000 people in the U.S. have come down with measles. How worried should we be about measles? If you're vaccinated, from what we're being told, the majority of the cases of measles are happening in unvaccinated individuals. What we're not being told is what percentage of the of the measles cases are in vaccinated. And I think that information is pretty necessary because for most of us who were vaccinated, if you want us to panic about measles, tell us why we need to panic. Is it that the vaccine isn't strong enough? If vaccinated people are getting measles, then maybe we need to get boosters. Measles can cause encephalitis, fertility issues, can cause some pretty serious illness. You can die from measles. But if you're vaccinated, it offers you a good amount of protection. We really don't have the numbers of how many cases are in vaccinated individuals. And I think that's very important because they keep saying, it's unvaccinated people spreading it. Could be. Unvaccinated people could be spreading it because they don't have that protection. But when we had that measles outbreak in that they believe started at Disneyland from foreign individuals that came to Disneyland one weekend, this was about a decade or two ago, they said that many of those individuals were actually vaccinated for measles. Okay, that's kind of important to know. I understand there's a narrative, right? The Public health officials don't like them when people choose to not vaccinate. But, this isn't about narratives. If vaccinated people are getting this, we need to know, because we might have to do boosters or we might have to update our vaccine. They say measles is spreading in Canada. It's exceeded 11,000 cases in Mexico. So they are urging soccer fans to make sure they're vaccinated. One single measles patient can spread the virus up to 18 unprotected people. So they're concerned that somebody's going to go to the World Cup or go to an NBA final or go to a Golden Knights game and get measles. But listen, if you're vaccinated, I think your risk is low. And understand, there's other things. People are going to be breathing on you. You're going to be in an enclosed, you're going to be confined with a lot of people, even if it's outdoors. So understand that whether you're on a plane, whether you're in a classroom, whether you're in, if you have health vulnerabilities, talk to your medical provider about what you should do. Ebola is on everybody's mind. I am not as concerned about Ebola spreading during the World Cup. Can Ebola, though, spread very viciously? Absolutely. Ebola is nasty. One reason why we don't have Ebola outbreaks to the degree as COVID is because, sadly, it kills the host too quickly. So when the host dies too quickly, the host doesn't have a chance to spread it to as many people. But we don't believe we have any Ebola cases here in America. But if that changes, that could be a concern. 1-877-Doc-Dolly. Don't go away.
Hey guys, it's Clyde. We've had a lot of requests for Ground Zero merchandise, so we put together an online store with a big variety of high-quality items. I'm really excited to let you know about these things. We have a lot to offer you and your loved ones. In addition to our regular apparel, such as t-shirts, beanies, hoodies, and hats, we've expanded our product line with posters, flags, aprons, mugs, and a whole lot more. We also have Ground Zero collectibles, along with a limited edition of items like a Clyde Lewis canvas portrait, a Ground Zero embroidered jacket that will certainly make for great gifts and for interesting conversations with family and friends. And we now offer publications such as Ron Patton's book about mind control, MK Zine, and back copies of the official magazine of Ground Zero while it was in print. Paranoia, the Conspiracy Reader, also coming in 2023, are updated and revised books that I've written. There's a secure and easy-to-use shopping cart for your purchases. So shop today at our official store by going to groundzeromerch.com. Again, that's groundzeromerch.com.
Hey, America. How tired are you of mainstream corporate media's biased narratives and manipulated news? Their dishonesty and attempts to influence this generation have been exposed, put on display for anyone who's even half paying attention. But the New American magazine has been an honest source of news and commentary for over 50 years. This is your opportunity to receive this stalwart of principled journalism at a deep discount. Picture a beautifully published magazine arriving at your doorstep twice a month, packed with insightful stories written with integrity. It's also available digitally on the New American's mobile app. Get up to speed with intelligent coverage from a freedom perspective. Right now, for a limited time, the New American is available to radio listeners at a 25% discount on a new subscription. Visit thenewamerican.com/radio25 and receive 25% off. Subscribe today at thenewamerican.com/radio25.
We are back on the Dr. Dolly Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. Dolly, 1-877-DOCDALI. I know people are very waiting patiently for the birthright citizenship ruling of the Supreme Court. I don't believe that's coming today. I think today they issued Keithley versus Buddy Ayers Construction. It was like an employment and construction related dispute. A FS Credit Opportunities Corps versus Saba Capital Master Fund had to deal with, I guess, a private right of action for contract rescission, and then Abu Amo versus United States, a federal criminal and procedural case. I don't really have a lot of details on those cases, but the Supreme Court is going to be, addressing birthright citizenship, just like they're going to be also looks like addressing Election Day. What does Election Day mean? Does it mean Election Day, or does it mean ballots could be counted for weeks later? I mean, that's that's a biggie. What we saw with California started to bring up a lot of concern, where Spencer Pratt was in the lead, Steve Hilton was in the lead, and then we start seeing Spencer Pratt. He wasn't the lead. Spencer Pratt was coming in second. They call Karen Bass very early on, even though there were hundreds of thousands of votes still pending. And when elections get called early, we're told the reason why they're called early is because they feel the votes come from an area that is going to be Democrat or Republican. And so they feel confident with the number. However, one of the other candidates was Nydia Rahman, a progressive Democrat. So why would you already call it for Karen Bass when there's hundreds of thousands of votes still pending and you have another Democratic candidate? That was very, very odd, very confusing. And then, as we all predicted, Spencer Pratt slowly loses his second place position, and now is going to be out of the running because California does jungle primaries where the top two get to advance. So if it's two Democrats are happy. Whereas with the governor race, Steve Hilton and Javier Becerra are the top two contenders, which is going to be a very interesting race. And they say the jungle primary was started by Arnold Schwarzenegger. And they say that he started it, and it gave Republicans an advantage, having the ability for two Republicans to run and raise and all that. But actually, I really think it helps the Democrats more. But it's whoever is in power. But the machine, whatever that voting machine is, especially in Southern California, I don't think was ever going to let somebody like Spencer Pratt win. And so, if there was going to be an opportunity to really evaluate how we're managing votes and mail-in ballots, this is the time to do it, because I think the whole country is looking at what's happening with California. You notice they're starting to rush it up. I think they only have like about 10,000 votes left to go through, and I don't think they're going to take as long as they did in the 2024 election, where it was deep into December when we learned that the Republicans who were in the leads in two congressional districts flipped to Democrat. By the time they counted the votes, that was very concerning, and people were kind of scratching their head with that one. But it was that was the final tally, they said, and that's what we had to go with. And so with something like this, where it's a primary, and we're still looking at the delay, I think they are going to speed it up now that they feel they've confirmed it's two Democrats running, for LA mayor, and they've pretty much confirmed that it looks like it is going to be Steve Hilton and Javier Becerra, moving onward for the race. But, everybody's been kind of looking at this and going, come on. Yeah. And as I said yesterday and the day before, mail-in ballots, you see these articles going, U.S. is not the only one that does mail-in ballots. Other countries do too. But the big difference between these other countries is you have to apply for your mail-in ballot. It just doesn't get mailed out by default. So the Supreme Court needs to, evaluate if the liberty that states have with elections is something that can unfortunately invite fraud, lack of trust, because if in order to save our democracy, people need to feel that when they go and vote, that one vote counts, that vote gets counted, and that there's no room for error or for shenanigans. And the longer this goes, the more concerning it is. If I have to read a petri dish for results, if I'm doing a scientific experiment and that petri dish has results available, you read those results right away. You don't wait, because then there could be room for error or contamination. We do that in science. Why aren't we also doing it in politics? Well, science, Dr. Dahlia, is very important. You have to have accuracy. So you have to read the results right away. Don't you need accuracy with our voting system? And so what I guess the Supreme Court is doing is looking at the definition of election day. Does election day mean voting happens on a day, or does it mean states are allowed to have a very lengthy grace period? With the mail-in ballots, it's really simple. You apply for one, just like any other country. Germany, Canada, you have to actively apply. Once you apply and you say why you need to vote by proxy, they give you that ballot. Then anything that happens on site is null and void because it would mean somebody's cheating. And you have that mail-in ballot, and that one mail-in ballot is what you get to submit. And, mail-in ballots weren't an issue because it was only a handful, just like a few thousand per precinct, per district. It wasn't a big deal. But now that it's the default, it's an absolute mess. And when my friend's son couldn't vote because they said you already voted in Colorado, and he lives in Texas, and he's like, but I've never been to Colorado, something's wrong. That means we don't have election integrity. We've got to fix that. Otherwise, the democracy falls apart. So what should the Supreme Court do? Well, the Supreme Court's going to look at the law. They aren't going to necessarily say no more mail-in ballots or anything like that. We do need mail-in ballots for those who are disabled or in the military. In fact, it's interesting because in some of these countries, for you to get, in Ireland, I think, for you to get a permanent mail-in ballot, you have to have documentation why you need to permanently get mail-in ballots as opposed to going in and voting in person. I mean, they know these other countries aren't stupid. They know that there could be room for fraud. And then, birthright citizenship. SCOTUS is going to be looking at that. My father, he didn't, get married or make me until he had his citizenship because he did not want to take a risk of any. He wanted to make sure that was solid. And he didn't want to take the chance of somebody saying, well, you only got your citizenship because you got married or because you had a kid here. So he became a citizen first, and then he married my mom, and then they had me. Birthright citizenship is where, you're designed for those who were slaves, who were abducted, kidnapped, taken here, put under grueling, horrific, tragic conditions. If they had a baby, that baby is American. Because they were here, the baby was born here. That's what the Constitution allows. Instead, it is now in modern day, well, if we sneak across the border, we have the baby. That baby legally then is American, so now we get to stay. And so anchor babies or birthright citizenship, again, somebody took advantage. If somebody didn't take advantage, we wouldn't be in this situation. And that's the problem. None of these would be issues if it wasn't to the degree that it is. So now SCOTUS has to take a look at, if the law that was designed, post-Civil War really applies to what happened with Biden, where people came across the border, it might not have followed the laws or the rules as it pertains to their, hearing dates, etc. Do those babies still get automatic citizenship? 1-877-Dr.
Looking for an easy read that can actually help secure someone's future? Pick up a copy of Mark Falter's book, Common Sense Income Strategies. For the past 30-plus years, Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. It's not rocket science, it's a pretty easy read. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. Common Sense Income Strategies is available now on Amazon or by calling 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Common Sense Income Strategies by financial fitness show host Mark Falter. Secure your financial future today.